So, my good friend with me today, we've got the legendary, and I have to say it, so you are a legend, David Wright. Man of many hats, I might add, David. So, some may know you as Mr. Bound, some know you as Mr. Whiz, some in the music profession know you as the Messiah of music. But today, I'd like to talk about because it is a birthday, and I'd like to talk about Cabmaster, which I think you would say yourself is a lot of what we see today in some of the dispatch software that is out there actually came from Cabmaster.
Mm-hmm.
So David Wright, it's an honor to have you on this little Zoom chat. Tell me about Cabmaster, 30 years old. How did it start?
It was not a plan. It wasn't a dream. A friend of mine, colleague of mine, I worked at Aliman Computer Systems, which I actually thought was owned by an Arabic chap, but actually it turned out that his daughters were Alison and Mandy. And Mick Vicari, who smoked cigars in the office before you could smoke outside, and he had minicabbed in the 70s between contracts for the banks, and he'd come up with this idea of a booking and dispatch, I wouldn't say system, but concept, and it was all on a piece of green and white listing paper, and I can't find it, but it was basically a dispatch screen and a driver trap screen, and that was really all it was. And that was enough to turn that idea into what I will call a noddy program, which was produced. I thought, well, taxis, they must be the most backwards industry that exists on the planet. And I wasn't wrong. So knocked up some software and tried to sell it. And eventually found a company in Bletchley, Quicker Cars, and he paid 750 quid for it. And we spent 3 months perfecting it and getting it working. Meanwhile, I carried on working. By that time, I'm now working as a contractor for the Bank of Nova Scotia. And for pretty much 2 years, I wrote all the software whilst working at the bank.
Wow.
By the time I actually left the bank, I now had Skyline as one of my customers. I had Bounds Taxis as one of my customers, and a few others. And for some bizarre reason, I decided to leave an extremely lucrative job in the city, earning more money than most people would earn today, to pursue a life of Cabmaster. But what had happened by that point, Howder, who did taximeters, I'd got in contact with them because of a customer in Northampton called Nortax, who said, "Oh, we'd like to be able to send the jobs through sort of." They had a kind of a vision on a screen to the car, and I did some research and I found this guy called Bill Green. And the first phone call I ever had with Bill Green lasted about 2 hours. Yeah. And to cut a long story short, he was working with Howder, had designed this data head, as everybody called them. Mm-hmm. And then Howder ended up taking on Cabmaster, and it was called Howder Cabmaster for a few years. And they paid me a retainer of £4,800 for several years, actually. they then pulled the plug all of a sudden in back end of 1994, and then times become very tough, and I couldn't even afford to pay my mortgage. And yeah, so yeah, everybody thinks that my road has been a rosy one where it's all just easy. It's not easy at all. It's a hard slog.
Yeah, so really, you're not only developing the software all the time, finding bugs and having to repair it. So you've got that road, which is a rocky road as well. But also on the business side as well, there's just you, I imagine.
It was just me.
So that's rocky as well. So all of a sudden, you've gone from the comfort of, working for a secure bank, good revenue, to being on your own with some software that really possibly back in 94, not every taxi company was ready for either.
Although when the exhibitions were really popular and people would queue 3 deep to see your software.
Did you have any rivals at this point? Was there the Arigas and the AutoCAD and the Mercury?
AutoCAD, Norris Computing, Cabby, Cabby, Adros.
Cordic?
No, Cordic didn't come along until early 2000s. So, yeah, don't forget when we didn't even have any internet until 96. So, although I would say that Skyline were the first company in the UK to be on full auto dispatch in the summer of 92.
Wow. So they were true pioneers along with your software.
Indeed, yes.
So moving on a few years, obviously some of the legends that are in the trade, not just because of people like, excuse me, Tom Pugh worked for you as a sales manager, and some of the other Pugh brothers. Is that correct?
I had all the Pughs.
All the Pughs.
Andrew Pugh, Tom Pugh, William Pugh, the brother-in-law.
Is there a factory somewhere making pews? There seems to be a lot of pews. Great guys there. So moving on, obviously, so the software progressed. It was the old model of, were you selling hardware as well as the software?
Well, back in the day, you had to supply the computers. Certainly, the end of the 90s, early 2000s. In many cases, some of the smaller companies, I had to supply them with cheap computers because they didn't have the money to buy computers. Yeah, they wanted to buy those on the drip. Everything was on the drip. That's the problem with this industry. There were exceptions, but most of the companies wanted it on the cheap. Yeah. It's my biggest regret, and that is dealing with an industry who appreciate nothing. They just want everything.
And the cost of developing software is so expensive, isn't it?
Yes.
If you and you can get it wrong so easily. And it's not like if you're building a house and the builder makes a mess of the wall, you get him to replace that wall. Whereas with software, it's continually updating, there's bugs in it, and there's a cost to the developer to put the bug right. So
the saving grace is it was an industry which one thing I do like is that it's a recurring income, kind of charging for the maintenance and upkeep. Excellent. But the game changer was when the PDAs came out. I thought, well, they're not going to go for this. They're going to have to pay per week per car. There's no way they're going to spend this kind of money. But fortunately, it became an inevitability which they couldn't shy away from.
I can remember the first one I saw. I think it was on a Cordic system. So we started ADT, and the first time I saw a dispatch system, it was a Cordic system, and they had the old XDAs, and they had a little bit of a wire with a receiver that used to sit on the dashboard. But sometimes if you went around the corner, the receiver would go off, and you'd lose the tracking on it. But it was a game changer, wasn't it? But it wasn't that reliable either. Well, from what I saw.
Well, I remember writing the software in 2005. I think it was ready to go live in 2006. Skyline went live, and Ali Safdar was still. He was retired from the business. He was there at the time, and we switched over to the PDA system and we also switched over from DOS to Windows the
Hmm.
same day. And we're now live, and Ali's cutting network cables in the other office because he had a new office.
Hmm.
I'm like, don't cut the cables yet. I'm not that confident. But we can go back.
There was a lot of dispatch systems going through that change, going from DOS to Windows, and some of them didn't quite manage it, if I recall. They had some big disasters on their hand. I don't think Cabmaster was one of those, but I am thinking Ariga had a problem with a system from going from DOS to Windows, and it didn't quite work.
I always looked up to Ariga before they became Trapeze.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were one of the true professionals, and then they just disappeared.
Yeah. So looking at the modern day systems, David, most of them cloud-based to a degree. You must look at a lot of the features and think, well, actually, people take this for granted, but that was my idea, and it took a lot of money and resources to get that right. What are the features now that you see on systems that you think, well, actually, that was my idea. I was the first to market with that.
I don't think about it very often, to be fair. I mean, obviously, GPS tracking and CLI. I mean, this is all, I would say, basic stuff nowadays.
Mm.
I mean, the PDAs themselves are PDA software. Although we were pioneers of auto dispatch back in '92, not 2002, not 2012, '92. It's not so much what they have nowadays, it's what they don't have.
Mm.
Yeah. They're all, I can only speak for one system, but they're locked in to functionality that doesn't have the flexibility that we would have had back in the day.
Yeah.
One of the big things is I would always be adaptable if customers wanted to come and if they wanted a mod. I had a very simple principle. If you're prepared to pay the going rate for a new feature, I will create that feature for you. There were no exceptions because money was money. Whereas now the customer doesn't get what the customer wants, even if they're prepared to pay for it. And that I found a very big.
Yeah. Is that a financial reason? It's economies of scale. They could put all the developers onto that one feature for that one company. At the same time, they're not covering everyone else's needs. To have a bespoke system, I suppose, with Zero, most of us use Zero's accounts package. We just accept, well, it does that. I'd like it to do that, but it just does that. And but you pay a small price for it, don't you? Well, I suppose if you want something a bit more bespoke, you'd use, I don't know, something like Oracle, wouldn't you? Which probably some of the big corporations use and so on.
Yeah.
It all comes down to cost, doesn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. But I don't envy the dispatch companies. Many of them that got into the industry, I just think you are mad. Yeah. And with the benefit of foresight, they probably wouldn't do it. But,
so if there's one feature now, you sit there, you're very creative, methodic. You have a method about things. You create music software, which I know you do now. As you're semi-retired, although you all say you're semi-retired, but you look pretty busy to me. But what feature would you like to see on the dispatch system moving forward? What is the thing? What are they missing? What David Wright feature could you add to the current crop of cloud-based systems?
I think what's missing is the reporting capabilities to be able to easily extract information. The system where, for example, in Cabmaster, if you wanted to make a change to all your drivers in one go, it was easy to do that. You could it could be. It doesn't really matter what it is. You want to turn something on or turn something off. It might be half a dozen things you want to turn on or off. It would be a few seconds. Now it could be a few days.
Yeah.
You have to go through each individual item one by one. So I think the ability to make global changes to data sets more easily. I mean, but to be honest, I'm not thinking about dispatch software from day to day, so I really don't have a list of features in my head. But I think the one thing I have commented on before, and it falls on deaf ears every time, and that is a smart development manager would have a list of all the features that the customers want, and what you would do, you would rate them 1 to 5, 1 being incredibly important, 5 being very unimportant, and then you'd also have another rating which is 1 to 5, or just time. How long will it take to produce or develop these features? And you simply take the highest priority features that take the least amount of time and give your customers the maximum benefit for minimum cost. And nobody does it.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Do you think a lot of them are more focused on the sales and marketing of the businesses rather than the development of the product?
Well, yes, obviously.
Yeah. I suppose, you've got to make money, haven't you, at the end of the day? So it's always a balancing.
But that's the compromise.
And selling.
So if you don't have the time to develop all these features, at least develop the important features that aren't going to take much time.
Yeah.
The playing field has changed radically now. We've got only a handful of suppliers. Cabby, AutoCab, Cordic, Cab Treasure. They're the ones that are in my head.
And a few people on Sherlock, Cab9.
But they're if you had the figures in terms of quantity of users, they're diminishing returns on.
Yeah. But David Wright, it's been fascinating. I could listen to you all afternoon, but sadly, our people that have joined us have probably got other things to do. But it's been fascinating. Obviously, guys, if you're watching this and you want to comment below, David will pick up the comments. If you want to discuss features or anything else, please comment below. But David, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best with your future and your music and everything else you with that creativity too.
Thank you.